Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Joel Onuk and welcome to Spooky Wednesday. In case it's the first time seeing me, hi, my name is Joel and I post true crime stories like this every Wednesday. So in case you're not subscribed to my channel, kindly subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment your thoughts. I always like to know what you guys think about the cases. Drop case suggestions because they're going to make me look into more cases in which I actually know nothing about. So guys, today we're actually going to talk about the backyard cemetery of Rose and Fred West. So I know some of you may know this case, some of you may not, but in case you guys know it already, I'm just here to refresh your memory. And in case you guys don't know it, I would just advise you guys to get wine, get water, get your food, just sit down and listen to me just devour and tell the story. This case is a very, very triggering case. So this case contains sexual abuse, sodomy, child abuse, child enslavement, basically all those bad stuff. So if you feel like this is going to be very bad for your mental health, I would kindly advise that you skip out, and I'll see you next week, most likely with something that you will relate to more or that will be very calming for your mental health. Who is Fred and Rose West? So Fred and Rose West, they were English serial killers. So their killings happened in a period of 1967 and 1987 in Gloucester, England. So before we go on, I'm going to talk about Rose West. So who is Rose West? Rose West was born as Rosemary West and she was born in 1953. Her father's name was Andrew Bill Late and her mom's name was Daisy. So her mom was diagnosed with severe depression that her mom had to undergo electroshock therapy when she was pregnant with Rose. The thing is, she was already far along in this pregnancy. She was almost due to deliver when she went through this electroshock therapy. And because of this, experts have actually come out to say like maybe the fact that she went through this while she was pregnant actually made Rose violent even right from when she was in the womb. What I didn't say was that when her mom was pregnant, her mom had a very difficult pregnancy when she was carrying Rose, and Rose was the fifth out of 7 children. Her mom carried this electroshock therapy, but her mom was still prone to depression. One day her mom couldn't take it any longer, and when Rose was a teenager, her parents separated. So when her parents separated, Rose stayed with her mom, and within 6 months she attended Cliff School, of which when she was almost 16 years she actually went to go and stay with her dad. And what I didn't say earlier was that Rose's dad was also diagnosed of paranoid schizophrenia, and this would actually make him burst out into anger. So he would literally get so angry and he would in extension or by extension harm his children or hurt his children. And also he was also known to sexually abuse Rose and her elder sister Patricia. When Rose was a teenager, she actually became obsessed with how her body looked, and she would look herself in the mirror and become so obsessed with her body that she would parade herself naked like in front of her younger brother Graham. It was reported that when she was 13 years, she would sneak into Graham's room and sexually molest Graham with her younger brother, like her brother that was younger than Graham. She would molest 2 of them. I think that one's name was Gordon. She would molest Graham and Gordon at night while they were sleeping, which was so sad. Some sources said that at this time that Graham was 12 years, while some sources said he was 9 years. Her molesting and putting him through this emotional torture was really, really, really bad. And obviously she got this from her dad. Her dad molested her when she was younger. It was also stated that she molested and harassed the boys that were in the village. So not only did she do this to her siblings, she also took it outside and harassed men or boys in the village. So guys, let's go to Fred West. So Fred West was born on the 29th of September 1941, and he was born in Bickerton Cottage in Herefordshire in England. He was the first surviving child of Walter Stephen West, and his mom's name too was Daisy. Guys, this is so crazy. Not the same mom. His mom's name was Daisy, just like Rose's mom's name too was Daisy. His mom's name was Daisy Hannah Hill. So Fred, he grew up just like Rose. Rose grew up from a poor family. I don't know if I said that, but Rose grew up in a very poor family. And Fred too grew up in a poor family. His whole family, they were all farmers, they were all farm workers, and they were very, very hardworking. His father made sure that everybody, from the children to the mom to the dad, like everybody worked every time. So in 1946, the whole family, they moved to Moor Cottage, and this was on the outskirts of Marchmackle. Fred's father, he worked as a milking herdsman and also a harvester. Fred's mom, she had given birth to 8 children, but by 1951, only 6 of these 8 children had actually survived. Fred was her first surviving child, so she was very fond of Fred, and Fred was seen as a mommy's boy. I don't know if using the term mommy's boy is offensive, I don't know, but Fred was labeled as a mommy's boy, and he was obviously his mom's favorite. She was very overprotective of her son, and her husband was a very hard worker, so like things that he just made sure that they actually did their work on time and were always hands-on. Fred was seen as an illiterate. He was formerly known as an illiterate. He was known to be dim, he was known to be scruffy, and he was just also known to be a very troublesome person. So when Fred was 15, he actually dropped out of school and went to work on his father's farm as a laborer. When Fred was 12, just like Rose West, when Fred was 12, he was introduced to sex by his mom. So his mom used to have sex with him when he was 12 years. Also, he was also introduced to bestiality. According to Fred, he actually thought that incest was normal because, according to him, he said that he had seen his dad, that he knew that his dad used to sleep with his sisters, but his younger brother Doug, came out to refute such claim and was like that is not possible, that Fred is just fantasizing. So whoever you want to believe, that is totally up to you. Believe whoever you want to believe. So when Fred was younger, it was reported that he actually used to pursue women aggressively and that he often objectified women, and also to him sex was just for his pleasure. He did not care about the other person. It was just as far as he was satisfied. He didn't care about whom he was having sex with. Even when he was younger, it was also noted that he used to actually molest girls when he was younger. He used to molest younger girls, like girls younger than him. That's what he was known for in the village. When he was also 18, he was actually arrested for raping a girl. When Fred was 17, he got into a motorcycle accident and he had a fractured skull, a broken leg, and a broken arm, and he was in coma for 7 days, and then he got off coma, and then he had to use braces for like about 7 months. And during this time, Fred had like certain phobias. Like he had phobias for hospitals. Yeah, he had phobia for, I used to have that when I was younger anyways. He had phobias for hospital, and he was scared of going to the hospital. And then not only did he have this certain phobia, he was an angry person already, but like now his fit to rage was just worse than it was before. He became much more angrier than he actually was. 2 years after this, Fred actually got a head injury because I think he tried to get a girl and they were in a fire escape, and this girl actually punched him in the face and he fell 2 floors down. So when he fell down, he actually sustained a head injury. In June 1961, Fred's younger sister Kitty cried to her mom and said that Fred has been raping her since December and that Fred had actually impregnated her. So Fred was actually arrested the same month, and Fred freely admitted to the police. He was like that he actually thought that it was normal. He was like, doesn't everybody do it? He was tried on November 9th in the court, and although his mom was very disgusted by his attitude, which is so crazy because she literally introduced this guy to sex by always sleeping with him. Anyway, she was disgusted by his attitude and by what he did, but she actually defended him in court, And after this, Kitty actually changed her mind and she refused to testify in court, so the case had to be withdrawn. Guys, you know why she changed her mind? Because obviously her mom or her family or somebody would have persuaded her to do that. After this, Fred was disowned by his family, his dad, his mom. I don't know if his mom disowned him, but like he was disowned by pretty much every member of his family, and he was sent out of their house. Guys, I'm sorry if you can hear the airplane. And he was sent out of their house, and he went to go and stay with his Aunt Violet. And here, Fred, one thing about Fred, he was a hard worker. Here, he actually worked hard. So guys, now let's talk about Fred's first wife. So Fred West, he was married to Catherine Costello in September 1962. He got married when he was younger. He was 21 years. And prior to their marriage, Costello, that's Catherine, she actually got pregnant, but she was pregnant by an Asian bus driver. She used to live in Scotland, but she relocated to England because when she found out that she was pregnant by this bus driver, she knew that her family was not going to accept the pregnancy, so because the child was mixed race, so she just wanted to leave Scotland. And that's when she moved to Herefordshire, where she actually reconnected with Fred. So some sources said that they were in a relationship prior to now, so that they were not strangers to each other. They actually knew each other, then they reconnected, and then they got married. And when they got married, they stayed in Fred's aunt's house, that's Aunt Violet's house. So here, Fred was an ice cream truck driver, which is so scary. So Fred and Catherine made it known to people that Fred was responsible for the pregnancy. But when the baby had come out, when Catherine had given birth to the baby, they had seen that the baby was mixed. But they had like a plan, a backup plan on what to say after that. So basically, they had actually said that Catherine had actually had a bad miscarriage, but obviously she felt so bad that, and she wanted to have a child, so he decided to adopt a baby. And people seem to go with the flow. They named the child Charmaine, which I really do love that name. Fred and Catherine named this girl Charmaine, and to other people the child was adopted, but they actually know how they got this child. So after the birth of Charmaine, they actually moved from where they were to Glasgow. When they moved to Glasgow, shortly after, Catherine actually gave birth to a second girl who they named Anne-Marie. So Catherine was known to be a very considerate mother, a very loving mother, a very kind mom. She was like every typical good mother. But Fred, on the other hand, was known to be a very abusive father. So basically, the children had bunk beds, but he built like iron bars in between them, and he would lock them in there whenever he was going to work, so that they wouldn't be able to come out from there till he's back from work or back from anywhere. Like, he literally like kind of tortured these children, to be honest. When he actually married Catherine, he also engaged in extramarital affairs, and one of the women he had an affair with was called Anne McFall, and she was just 18 years and she was pregnant for Fred. But when Fred found out that she was pregnant, he actually killed her, obviously. But like, her body was not discovered till like 1994, and this was like 1962 or so. So like, literally, she was not discovered for like all those years. Like, Fred killed her, and when Fred killed her, he opened up her body and took out her fetus and kept it to himself as one sick trophy, which is so scary, guys, which is so scary. One day, Catherine, she packed her bags and she left. But the thing is that Catherine has been doing this like different times. She would come, pack her things, and leave her two children with Fred. I don't know why she would leave her two children with Fred, but then again, like, nobody knew where she was going to. She did this on a number of occasions till one day she did it and she never came back. Or did she really not come back? Because later down we realized that Fred actually killed his wife Catherine. Anytime Catherine left, sometimes Fred would actually be overwhelmed with like taking care of his children, so he would place his children in foster care, and when he found himself on his feet again, he would go and get his children back. Let's talk about how Fred and Rose met. Rose met Fred on a bus, and immediately Fred saw Rose. He was very intrigued by her. He loved her. It was love at first sight. So they met in early 1969. And at this time, Rose had just turned 15 and Fred was 27 years old. So initially, Rose was very repulsed about how unkempt Fred looked. Like, Fred looked so dirty, he looked like he didn't take care of himself. So like, she was at first like disgusted by how he looked. But Fred was very, very persistent with Rose. He really wanted to get to know Rose, and Rose, like, after some time, she kind of got flattered by the whole attention because like Fred was very persistent. So one day, Fred actually found out where Rose worked and found that Rose actually works in a bread shop. So he went to the bread shop and then he persuaded an unknown person to go in there and give Rose a gift, and was like, someone outside said I should give this to you. So when she did, she came out to see who had actually given her the gift, and she found out that it was Fred West. And when she came out, Fred had asked her out on a date and she had accepted to go on the date with Fred. So from time to time, she accepted to like be in a relationship with Fred, and the two of them got along, and she even willingly became his babysitter. But after some time, she now moved in with Fred. But the thing is that like when she moved in with Fred, she quit her job in the bread factory, and then she also told Fred, she was like, see ya, you're going to pay me the same amount in which they pay me in the bread factory, so that I'll have something to show my parents, and my parents to think that I'm still working in the bread factory, which Fred actually totally agreed with. So after some time, she moved in to be with Fred and his two children. I think, yeah, then he had two children as a babysitter. So Rose's parents had actually found out about the relationship. So how they actually found out was Rose had actually introduced Fred to her parents and her family, and they were very shocked because they were like, why would you be with somebody that is like almost twice your age? And they were not having it. Her dad actually demanded that Rose actually stop seeing Fred, which is another case of hypocrisy, because her dad used to molest her and abuse her sexually. So like, the hypocrisy in this case is just smelling. Anyways, Rose's parents, they actually forbade Rose from dating Fred, but Rose was a very stubborn girl, and she refused. She was like, she was still going to date him because she believed that was the love of her life. Rose's father reported her to social services and was like that she's a minor and Fred is with her. Obviously, Rose was just 15 years. Rose's father now told the social service and was like that there's even a rumor going on that she actually prostitutes for Fred in Fred's caravan. And because of this, the social service, they actually placed Rose in a troubled home for teenagers, and she was only allowed to like go out of the care home or the troubled home only under controlled conditions. On her 16th birthday, she left home to go and stay with her parents, and during this time, Fred was serving a 30-day sentence for theft and unpaid fines. So when once Fred was released from prison, she left her parents' house to go and stay with Fred. Her dad again found out that obviously that his daughter was with Fred, and he made one final attempt to bring his daughter back. He was so furious and he reported his daughter again to social services. So they took his daughter, and a police surgeon actually examined the daughter and found out that Rose was actually pregnant. So Rose was put into care, but then again she was released into the care of her dad under the conditions that she was going to terminate the pregnancy, which she agreed to. But when she went to stay with her dad, she opted out and she was like, she's not going to terminate the baby, and she went to go and live with Fred. So her dad became very furious, and her dad actually forbade her from coming to the house any longer. He basically banned her from coming to the house if she wanted to end up with Fred. On October 17, 1970, Rose actually gave birth to her first child, whom she named Heather Ann. And again, I love the name Heather. So after the birth of Heather, Fred was in prison. Yeah, guys, he was in prison a lot. So after the birth of Heather, Fred was in prison for theft of car tires and vehicle tax disc. He was in prison till 24th June 1971. So during this time, Rose was looking after the three girls by herself. that she was looking after Charmaine, Anne Marie, and Heather Ann. And at this time, she was only 17 years old, guys. Anne Marie later came forward and said that her and Charmaine, they were actually always subjected to severe abuse by Rose, that Rose used to really hit them so hard and abuse them emotionally and physically. That Charmaine, on the other hand, while Anne Marie was someone who would give in to these beatings and this abuse and cry, Charmaine, on the other hand, was a strong one. She would not give in to the abuse. Anne Marie even came out to say that there was even a time where Charmaine was like, our real mommy won't beat us and speak to us that way. So like things like this just really used to infuriate Rose more, and she would really hate Charmaine. I know Charmaine and Anne Marie were not her daughter, but I feel like she really hated Charmaine, and I feel like Charmaine got like the most of her hatred. Also, hospital records, they also discovered that Charmaine was brought into the hospital because she had severe puncture in her ankle, but Rose only said that this was a house accident. And I'm like, this is a case where the system actually failed these children, because when we go down the line, you guys will see that like in the space of 20 years, these people, these children, the children of Anne and Fred West, they were actually brought into the hospital several times with unexplained injuries, and not one of the hospital operatives like found it possible to like maybe call CPS or CIN. Like, do you understand? Like, this is a clear case of how the system actually failed these children for a long time, over 20 years. So now we're going to the death of Charmaine. So Rose killed Charmaine when Fred was in prison. So let's not forget that Fred was in prison till 24th of June 1971. So June 15th, Rose, Charmaine, Heather Ann, and Anne Marie, they had gone to see Fred in prison, and coming back, when they came back shortly between 15th of June and 24th of June, shortly between that time. Some sources said it was between 20th and 24th, but let's just put between 15th and 24th, because that was the period where Charmaine was last seen and when Fred came out of prison. So shortly between that short span, Charmaine had died because Rose had actually killed her, and when she killed her, she placed her body in a cellar for her dad to come back and bury the body. Prior to this, Rose kept telling everybody that Charmaine had gone to stay with her mom, that her mom, Catherine, had come to pick Charmaine up. But then again, like, why would her mom come to pick Charmaine up and not pick Anne Marie? Like, does that make sense? Because her mom was known to be a very loving woman, someone who loved the children. So why would she come and pick one and leave the other? Because let's be realistic, even though you may say, oh, but Anne Marie is Fred's real child, the public did not know that Charmaine was not Fred's real daughter, because the public, what they actually knew was that Charmaine was an adopted child or adopted child of Fred and Catherine. So in reality, people would choose the one in which they gave birth to, like, naturally, than an adoptive child. So why would she come and pick the child she adopted to the one that she gave birth to, if that makes sense? But anyways, I hope that makes sense. I know that's different ways where people would have seen it differently, but anyways, that was the story that Rosemary had given the public. So on 24th of June, Fred came back from prison and discovered that his child was dead, because obviously his girlfriend at that time, Rose, had told him that, see, I killed Charmaine. And he didn't even say anything. He just took her body and buried her body. So his wife, Catherine, had come to inquire about her daughter. She's like, where is Charmaine? Where is Charmaine? And he had no excuse. He had no reason as to where Charmaine was. And he killed Catherine too and buried her body. And that was the last anybody had ever heard from Catherine. He told people that Catherine had packed her things and left, but in reality, that was not the case. He had actually killed his wife. So shortly after Fred had killed Catherine, he married Rose. At this time, Rose was pregnant for their second child. And once he married Rose, they actually bought the house. They bought a house on 25 Cromwell Street. from the local council, which cost about £7,000. So in order to pay their mortgage, they used to sublet the rooms upstairs of their house to people. Like, they used to basically do bed sitting, so people will come and stay in their house for like a short period of time and will pay them. So that's how that's where they got money from, to pay the council. Immediately Rose had actually given birth to her second child. Immediately she became a prostitute. So she used to prostitute herself. So you know, like I said, like they had like rooms upstairs. So one of those rooms was Rose's room. So that's the room where she would stay to give her services. She also used to advertise her services in the local Contact magazine, and this is where she used to get clients from. Even her manager was Fred, and Fred even kind of suggested that she should advertise mainly to the Gloucestershire West Indian community. I don't know why he suggested that. So also Rose, apart from the fact that she was prostituting and having sex in exchange of money, she actually used to have casual sex with people who actually came to shortlet in the house, and it didn't matter if they were men or women. She slept with each and every one of them despite their sex or their gender. It was also reported that sometimes when Rose was working, that Fred would actually watch through peepholes that he had done himself. Just, I don't know what that was for. Was it to satisfy his own sexual gratification? I don't know, but that's what he would do. And again, it was also found out that when her father found out that she was prostituting, he actually became one of her customers, which is so ew, which is so disgusting. And I'm like, okay, what was the fight with you and Fred for, if you're still going to be an asshole? Do you understand? I'm not supporting her and Fred, but like, her dad is a huge hypocrite. Huge hypocrite. You guys can agree with me on that. Guys, my card became full in case the camera angle has changed. I had to change my card quickly. In 1983, Rose was a mother to 8 children. It's also believed that at least 3 of these children were actually fathered by her client, but I don't know if her client actually knew that they had children by Rose. Anyways, the fact that Rose had these 8 children didn't mean that the children lived comfortably. No, they were constantly abused by their mom and their dad, especially. Fred would abuse these children, and like right from when they were 8, he actually started sexually abusing the girls, and once they turned 13, he actually sold them into prostitution. Also, reports states that between 1972 and 1992, that the children were admitted 31 times into the hospital with unexplained injuries, which I'm like, how the hell would you see same people from the same family coming in all the time, all these years, and literally you guys did nothing about it? Like, this is an example of how the system actually failed this whole family. The children were also assigned to do numerous tedious tasks around the house, and they were as little as 7 years. Imagine a 7-year doing like this whole ass household, like literally being slaves in their own house. That's how they lived their life. The violence was sometimes irrational and indiscreet, but one thing about Rose, Rose was very smart when it came to torturing her children. She would make sure that she would touch every other part of their body except their face, because obviously clothes will hide the other parts, but like when it came to the face, clothes is not going to hide the face. So like, she would torture them around their whole body and leave their face. I'm going to get to that very soon. So 2 of her children, Heather and Stephen, they actually ran away from home because they were just tired of the whole abuse. They were moving from street to street looking for how to survive, but they could not actually survive on the street. So like, they decided to come back home, which I'm sure would have been very sad, because I'm sure they would have sat between themselves and be like, see, there's nothing else we can do. Let's just go home. Like, we already got the abuse, let's just continue, is what we grew up to do. So like, they actually left home because they could not continue, and they had no other choice but to go back home and continue the abuse from which they were running away from. There was a time that Stephen was actually mopping the floor, and Rose stepped into the mopping bucket, and then she beat the hell out of Stephen. She beat him, she kicked him, kicked his chest, hit his head, and she was like, you did that on purpose, you little swine. She beat the hell out of him, and Stephen was saying, "Mommy, no, I did not," but like she didn't care. She would really, really hate him so hard. And there was even a time that one of her kitchen utensils was missing, and she got so angry. She picked up a knife that she used in cutting meat, and she was chasing her daughter May. And when she got hold of her daughter, she started slicing her daughter's body with a knife around her rib cage area, but she didn't make it deep. It was just like faint slicing, and May was screaming. May was like, "Mommy, stop." I think it's that Heather and Stephen, they were just watching their mom abuse their sister, and obviously there's nothing they could do. They were just standing there. They were just crying so bad, because obviously they had tried to do anything. The mom's anger would just deviate to them. So like, because they were trying to save themselves, but obviously they didn't know how to do it. They just, all they did was just stood there and just cried. There was even a time in August 1974 that Rose actually chased Fred. So she chased Fred with a knife to stab Fred, and Fred ran, and then Fred now like slammed the door. But this actually made Rose to cut herself. So she cut herself. She cut 3 of her fingers, but I don't think it damaged any major arteries. And then she just, when I think her body became calm, she just started wrapping her hand, and she was like, "Look at what you've done now, mate. You're going to have to take me to the hospital now." So Rose on herself, she was a very violent person. Like, I know like her and Fred made the whole duo, but like I feel like she was a very, very violent person. In September 1972, the West, they let their 8-year-old daughter into one of their rooms upstairs, and this was when they forced her to take off her clothes. And while she was kind of wasting time, Rose kind of tore her clothes off her body and stripped her naked, and they bound her to a piece of furniture and they gagged her. And this was where Fred actually went further to molest and rape his daughter. Guys, she was just 8 years old. And after he did this, Rose went on to explain to Anna Marie and was like, "Every father does this to their daughter. This is what fathers do to their daughter. Don't you dare tell anybody. If you tell anybody," she threatened to beat Anna Marie, and Anna Marie just kept quiet. How can she say this is what every father does? My dad didn't do that to me. Like, honestly, like, this is just so sad to hear, because this is also part of grooming. She was like, "Every father does this to their daughter. Don't tell anybody, this, that." And obviously Anna Marie didn't tell anybody, but if to say this was the first and the last time, it wasn't, because this was like a continuous thing. That even Anna Marie, she actually fell pregnant, but the thing is she had to terminate the baby because the baby was in the fallopian tube, not in her womb, which would have hurt so bad. Like, guys, this is so sad. So she actually had to terminate the baby. So when Anna Marie was 13 years, Rose and Fred forced her into prostitution. And when they forced her into prostitution, they made her tell the clients that she was 16 years. So in order for her to make sure that she actually told the clients this, Rose will actually be in the room while Anna Marie was servicing these people. So just so that Anna Marie will not end up saying, "Oh, I'm 13 years, I'm not 16 years. So that Anna Marie will not slip up. She would be in the room with Anna Marie. But I don't know if she stayed for the whole length or if she just stayed for the introduction or whatever. In 1992, one of Fred's daughter, Louise, she was crying and weakling in pain. She told her siblings that her dad has been raping her, and then she also told Rose. And Rose was like, "Yeah, you asked for it, you got what you deserve." So this was like a burden on Louise, that she had to confide in one of her friends, and her friends had to tell her mom, in which by extension her mom told the police. So the police went to their house on 6th of August 1992 and arrested Fred and Rose, and Louise gave a full statement. So the police, they were very interested in the case, and then they placed all the children in foster care. Fred was charged with rape and burglary. I know now burglary may be seen as an offensive term, but then that's what Fred was charged with, while Rose was charged with accomplice and child cruelty. Despite the fact that Louise had actually given like full statement, when it came to the court day, she actually refused to give her statement in court, and obviously we know this because of her parents. So because of this, the case didn't go as it wanted to, as it was meant to go, so it was actually withdrawn. So this actually made this case just was like an opener for police to actually look further into the lives of Rose and Fred. So they found out that their elder daughter, Heather Ann, was nowhere. Is it Heather? And yeah, they found that their elder daughter Heather was nowhere to be found, and also Charmaine was nowhere to be found, and also Catherine was nowhere to be found. So with everything up in the air, the police decided to obtain a search warrant to search the house of Fred and Rose West. And when they went, Fred actually admitted that yeah, he actually killed Heather, and they asked him where he buried Heather's body. Doesn't forget, Heather was 16 years at this time, and he said that he buried Heather's body in the backyard in their garden. So police went and excavated the whole garden, and then they had seen that yeah, that Heather was buried there, but she was mutilated. So even though she was buried in the garden, her body parts were scattered literally everywhere around the house. When the police had actually found out her body, Fred had actually confessed to 2 more murders, and when he had confessed to 2 more murders, the police went and they actually excavated their garden more, and they found 3 bodies. After this, Fred confessed to 9 more murders. But despite all this, he kept saying that Rose had nothing to do with it, and Rose was innocent about the whole thing, about the whole crime, but Rose was still arrested. On 20th of April 1994, Rose was arrested, and so Fred had come forward to say that Rose actually killed Charmaine, because obviously he was in prison when Charmaine died, so that Rose had actually killed Charmaine and he had nothing to do with Charmaine. The only thing he did was bury her body. So now let's go to the conviction. So the trial lasted for 7 weeks, and when it lasted for 7 weeks, the jury had actually found them guilty. So on November 21st and 22nd, the jury had unanimously voted them guilty of all 10 murders. They said that their crimes were appalling and depraved. So Mr. Justice Mantel, he actually sentenced Rose to life imprisonment, emphasizing that she would never be paroled. But the Lord Chief Justice later decided that she would spend at least 25 years in prison. But later on, the Home Secretary at that time in 1997, Jack Straw, he actually subjected her to a whole life tariff. And this was the second whole life tariff imposed on a woman in the UK, after the first one in 1990, which was Myra Hindley. Guys, if you want me to talk about that, let me know. Initially, Rose was incarcerated at HM Prison Brunsfield in Middlesex. She was later transferred to HM Prison Low Newton in County Durham, before in 2019 she was transferred to HM Prison Newhall in West Yorkshire. Rose almost immediately appealed against her 10 murders with the Court of Appeal. She claimed that her husband had committed the murders single-handedly and she had nothing to do with the murders. She also said that she was a victim of Fred, that there was a time that she tried to stop Fred from one of his sexual assaults and he faced her and said that she had nothing to do with it, but the court was not buying it. They did not answer her. Anyways, on March 18, 1996, the Court of Appeal, they said they would never ever consider any of her appeals. But by September 2001, Rose had actually said, guys, if the camera has moved, my battery died. Yeah. September 2001, Rose had actually said that she was not going to appeal any longer, but she still said she was innocent, but she's not going to appeal to the court. She's just going to stay and serve her time forever in prison, because she's never ever getting out of prison. Thank you, Jesus. The remainder of Rose and West children, they were actually given the help that they needed, and they were also given new identities. It was also suggested that Rose could have been the mastermind, because Rose was the one. I think that even Fred was actually scared of her, to be honest. So like, let's not forget that Fred was known to be an illiterate. So like, there's no way that he would have thought of all these things. Like, it was known that people actually believed that Rose was the instigator and Fred was just like, because Fred was totally in love with Rose. Like, he was so in love with Rose, like that even when she actually ignored him in prison, that was when he retracted his testimony and said all the ones that Rose had actually done. But like, he was so in love with Rose. So like, again, like, yeah, I would think that Rose was an instigator. That the fact that Fred was aggressive, Fred is an aggressive person, it didn't mean that he was the instigator. So Fred, he actually took his own life himself. I don't know how these people would be serial killers and then they are so scared to face justice, or they'll be serial killers and they'll be so scared for the death penalty. But you were going out killing people, now you're scared to die. But the people that you killed, who told you they were not scared to die? Who told you they were not scared to die? But like you just did it, and then when you're being caught, you're scared. Why? So now we'll talk about the victims of Fred and Rose West. So on unspecified date, Catherine Costello, this is Fred's first wife, she was assaulted by Fred. John McCullen, this is Catherine's lover, his stomach was grazed with a knife by Fred. November 4th, 1965, Michael O'Keefe, he was 4 years, he was accidentally killed and was run over by Fred. So this is known to be Fred's first murder, official first murder. In July 1967, Anna McFall, 18 years, she was killed and dismembered by Fred alone. She was pregnant at the time of her death. He presumably removed her fetus from the womb post-mortem, and her body was found June 4th, 1994. January 5th, 1968, Mary Balstom, who was 15, she was suspected to have been killed by Fred alone. In 1971, June 20th to 24 was when Rosemary West died, and she was just 8 years old. So this was Fred's daughter from his first marriage. August, Catherine Rena West, 27, she was actually killed by Fred, and this was Fred's first wife. In December 1972, Catherine Owen, 17, she was held captive overnight. She was bound, she was gagged, she was smothered with a pillow, and she was raped by both Rose and Fred, and she was released the next day. In 1973, April 19, Linda Goff, she was just 19 years when she was killed by Fred and his wife. November 10th, Carol Ann Cooper, she was 15 years when she was killed by the couple. December 27th, Lucy Catherine Partington, she was just 21 years when she was killed by the couple. In 1974, April 15, Therese Sengenfer, 21, was killed by the couple. In November 14, 1974, Sherry Hubbard, 15, she was killed by the couple. April 12, 1975, Juanita Marion Mott, 18 years, was killed by the couple. May 10, 1978, Shirley Ann Robinson, 18, was pregnant when she was killed by the couple. August 5th, 1979, Alison Chambers, 16, was killed by the couple. June 1987, Heather Ann West, she was 16 years, and she was the daughter of Rosemary, and possibly her own father, was choked, strangled with a pair of stockings, and dismembered. Guys, one thing I actually forgot to say was that Heather was either fathered by Fred or by Rose's father, which is so wild. Oh my days. So in addition to the above crimes, Fred is also known to have committed several other crimes, and also he had also confessed to more murders which have not been recognized yet. So guys, this is all I have. If you're not subscribed, kindly subscribe. Please guys, before you go, please like this video, comment, and yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm very, very tired. I don't know if you guys can get it from my voice, but this is my second time recording this. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and listening to me. If you're subscribed to my channel, thank you. Just hit the like button and share if you care. If you're not subscribed to my channel, kindly subscribe to my channel. I really do appreciate your help. And thank you guys so much. Until next time, bye. Bye.